Yeah, I do think Bitcoin is still going to 21 to 25k. Although I would kind of remind you that my prediction is as of current really is actually 20k to 24k. All right, just a very slight adjustment. It basically means nothing, right? The point is it's going to that region. It's going to about low to mid 25k region, in my opinion, right? That's my opinion. So yeah, I would still be interested. I don't know what's happening with my chart here. It's taking a while to load. Might be some internet difficulties here, but no, it's all good. It's just come up. I'll wait for some of the indicators to come up. There we go. Yeah, so I think it is still going there, and I suppose part of your question would be, would you buy at 30k? No. I wouldn't buy at 30k unless there was a consistent evidence for a reversal pattern, right? And that is possible. I mean, 30k has acted as the bottom on 2 occasions, but for something to act as the bottom on 3 occasions is, if it happens, that's excellent, but it doesn't really happen too often, I don't think, especially when you're looking at these longer-term assets. Now, it could, as I said, it could very well happen, but if it does happen, there will be a lot of signs of it before it actually does play out. It will be something like here, okay, in May to July, where we see extensive consolidation on that region as there's a lot of buying, selling contention in that region, right? So it's literally the line in the sand for Bitcoin, and so, when we get there, if there's a massive consolidation period, and we start seeing bullish divergence, and we start seeing volume decreasing in the downwards trend, you could make the argument that we're going to bounce off of that region. Now that argument could be made under the logic that we'll see a dead cat bounce, but ultimately I don't think it can be made under the logic that we'll see a recovery. Now, obviously, that's something we have to look at the point in time, but the general kind of trend for Bitcoin and the general thing I'm heading towards is that we're going down, in my opinion, to the 200-week SMA. And for us to bottom anywhere else but the 200-week SMA would be abnormal, okay? I'm a trader, I'm an investor as well. I invest with the trend, okay? The trend is that every time Bitcoin loses the 50-week SMA, it ends up at the 200. That is the trend, okay? The trend, as you would know, is your friend until it ends, okay? And if you're buying Bitcoin before it reaches the 200-week SMA, you're ultimately telling the trend that, hey, you don't matter, and I'm just getting to go do my own thing. It's illogical. The point is it's illogical, okay? So every time, as you can see, we lose this red line, which is the 50-week SMA, we end up at the 200. Every time. It's only happened 3 times. Even in the COVID drop, even in the panic of the COVID drop, it happened, right? All of these things downwards here, they're wicks, they don't matter. Okay, the point is we've never closed below the 200-week SMA. And so we've lost the 50, everything's playing out the same way. Of supporting this, we've also lost the Gaussian channel, okay? That's a red Gaussian channel there. Every time that happens, we see we end up at the 50 at the 200. Okay, that's flipping red in just a couple of weeks here. Okay, and that will be another piece of supporting evidence. Now, another piece of supporting evidence would be the Ikomoku cloud. Okay, we've just lost that as well. So ultimately, if you're buying Bitcoin before you reach that 200-week SMA, in my opinion, you are investing against the trend. Now, if something happens, as I said, like if we go down to, say, 30k, and there's just so much evidence that we're going to bounce and it's just undeniable, yeah, well then obviously I'm going to consider buying. I'm not going to be an idiot, right? But as of right now, I'd still stand by the fact that we're going down to that region. 20k to 24k is what I think for Bitcoin. Let's go back to the Coinbase chart here, and we can get a bit of analysis on what's going on the day-to-day basis. So yeah, I mean, if March doesn't happen, could 30k be the bottom? Again, it just depends on the 200-week SMA. So Bitcoin is kind of, in a rejection zone right now. And I've made this very clear. If you don't follow me on Twitter, this is not a shameless plug. Go and follow me on Twitter because you will miss things if you don't follow me on Twitter. If you like my analysis, I'm telling you right now, you will miss important things that I say, such as, I think we're going to drop below this channel, or this wedge, sorry. You'll miss things like that. I can't make a video about every price movement. I just can't. It's too time consuming. And so some of the price movements I make analysis on Twitter. And so if you're not following me on Twitter, you're going to be missing out on some analysis, and that's just what it is. But if you don't want it to happen, the easy solution is follow me on Twitter. So what we're looking at for Bitcoin right now, and this is a shorter term time frame, is a clear rejection. Okay, this is a ascending wedge formation. Ascending wedge formations, as I would have explained on Twitter, break to the downside about 70 to 80% of the time. Maybe even more, right? Maybe even more. I don't remember the exact number. I think it's about 70 to 80% of the time they break to the downside. Now, when considering in conjunction with this ascending wedge formation, which already has a 70 to 80% chance to break to the downside, we have a long-term support line, this pink line here, acting as resistance to the top of the wedge and blocking us from breakout. We can say conclusively, or we did say yesterday, that this thing has a 95% chance to break to the downside, roughly. Okay, very clear, very concise, very logical. I don't see how anyone would be bullish going into one of the most bearish chart patterns you can ever see. Okay, the reason they were bullish is because they were drawing it like actual idiots, right? They were drawing it like this, not to be rude, but they literally were. They were drawing it like an ascending. Let me just delete everything so I can show you how these guys were actually drawing it and how you can manipulate the information so easily in crypto. They were literally doing this. They were saying it's a massive ascending triangle formation like that. Okay. It clearly wasn't an ascending triangle formation. I mean, the ascending wedge formation made a lot more sense here on Bitcoin. We had 4 tests of the top on the wedge. We had 3 tests of the top on the triangle. It's really as simple as that. There was no ascending triangle formation there. And what we can see is that we've broken the downside very, very easily here, as expected. And now what we need to be looking at is, where is this break going? What is the target for this break? Well, it's quite simple, really. We have to take the first test of the top to the first test at the bottom, and we can get a measured kind of target for where this break would be going. And we can apply that to the breakout point, and we can see that this breakdown on Bitcoin from the ascending wedge formation, this yellow dashed line, is going to be targeting 33K, okay? And there is significance in that target. And if we actually bring it up to the actual closing point, rather than the wick, you can see it's exactly targeting 33K. Things don't happen by coincidence in this market. Everything happens for a reason in this market. It sounds cliche, but it's literally true. Okay? The breakout happened to a point where a conventional measured move would take us exactly to the close of the last previous lows. That is not a coincidence, right? It's just how it works. That is 33K. So I think that Bitcoin in the next, say, 3 to 4 days, maybe 5 days, right? It really depends. It could be a week, who knows? But looking at the time frame here, I would say, it's looking at happening somewhere around here. So next 3 to 4 days, I think that Bitcoin is going to be at 33K, and I think it will have a potential at 33K to potentially, and this is a potential, form a double bottom formation. And I think that will be the next kind of hypey thing the bulls will talk about. Okay, notice how at every single support block, at every single resistance block, there is always one kind of chart that kind of stirs up massive attention amongst the bullish people, right? People who think it's going to go up. And I think the next one will be a double bottom. Now, what I would say about double bottoms is people thought we were going to have a double bottom here. It didn't happen. They thought the same thing here. It did not happen. They probably thought the same thing was going to happen here as well. Did not happen. Okay, so if it didn't happen 3 times, why is it going to happen here? That's my question to you. I don't think it's going to happen. No, and if it does, if it does, who cares, right? I don't think it's going to take us to all-time highs. So that's kind of the simplest way I could put it. Now, I know we have some new people in the chat, and we always do. Okay, and I want to say, if you haven't watched these videos before, now you would have heard before. I think we're going down to the 200-week SMA, and that's going to be at around 20 to 24K, depending on when we get there. But I think that it's worth noting as well on every video I do about Bitcoin, every talk I do about Bitcoin, that the 48K region is my critical invalidation point. So if we break 48K, we're inadvertently breaking multiple, that I'm bringing them up right now, multiple major resistance zones. So if we break 48K, we're jumping above all of those, and hence it would be reasonable to assume that a bull market is starting once more. But 48K, I will remind you, is a long way away. That 48K is a 30% gain away. And to get a 30% gain in a time of critical positions in the market, very, very difficult. So, looking at Bitcoin right now, it's very clear in a bear market, very clear in a downwards trend. Now, if we look at the daily chart, which we haven't done before, it just materializes even further. And we closed the daily candle 20 minutes ago. It consolidates in our mind even further that we've actually broken below that ascending wedge formation. Okay, and we can see that, well, we've had a bullish MACD cross already. And that didn't do anything, right? It literally took us like $1,000 to the upside. And now what we're doing is we're actually priming ourselves for a bearish MACD cross again. And we can see that the RSI has come up significantly here. It's come up from, let me check. It's come up from around 20 or 20 on the RSI, and it's come all the way up to 34 or even 41 at the peak of yesterday. And it's just kind of refreshed the indicators. So this is what happens in a downwards trend. You get little bounces that kind of bring up the RSI a little bit, bring up the MACD, and get them ready for another drop and dropping further than before. So the most obvious reason why this uptrend wasn't going to work, wasn't going to break this pink line, was because the volume was down. All you need to do is look at every single retest of the top of this pink line. We look at this one here. And let me clear this chart. Let me clear this chart completely, actually, so you guys can see this very clearly, because this is actually very important. If you want to be effective at TA, one of the most important things you need to learn is volume, and we're going to apply that to Bitcoin right now and see what we can see. Right? I haven't looked at this before. I'm just going to look at it right now. what we can see is that every time we test this line, okay, circle here, we tested it there, we see descending volume in the upwards trend, okay? Another test happened here, descending volume in the upwards trend. Another test happened here, descending volume in the upwards trend. When you see descending volume in an upwards trend, volume going down on a day-to-day basis, I'm not talking the hourly chart, I'm talking day-to-day basis, you generally see that trend not be successful and you see that trend reverse very, very quickly. And so until we see ascending volume going into this resistance line, there's no reason for anyone to be bullish, right? We literally, it would be very, very, very challenging to break to the upside without seeing ascending volume in the upwards trend. If you're seeing descending volume, you're generally just going to reject from resistance. And that's an important rule for TA. Everyone can apply that no matter how advanced you are in technical analysis. So, again, and this goes into it, we're still seeing descending volume. And the vast majority of yesterday, even though this candle's closed red, we were in the upwards trend still. And so the fact that we've seen low volume just kind of further consolidates that the bulls are very, very weak here. No one's actually willing to buy that high. Okay, that's the problem. No one is willing to buy at those prices. There's not really too much to say about Bitcoin other than it doesn't look good. And I think that 33K, as explained before in the hourly chart, is the next step. And if we break below 33K, which, basically probably will happen, right? It's very unlikely it won't happen. We're heading to 30K. All right, and then if you look at 30K, it's held 3 times already. Do we think it's going to hold again, especially considering the argument to be made that we've dropped below the 50 weeks, we're ending up at 200? No, I don't think it will hold. And so the next logical support below that, in terms of price action, is actually coming down all the way to this little block here, this tiny block at 24K. Could we hold 24K? Now, that's when you're getting serious, right? I think there is a very considerable chance that 24K could hold. But if we drop 24K, 20K is next, and that's where the 200-week SMA would be. So people like to think of, they like to say things like, well, you're saying we're going to go to 20K or 24K. That's a 30% drop away. That's a long way away. I would say that, yes, it's a 30% drop away, but there's basically no support between us and there besides 30K. If we lose 30K, it's going to happen, right? It's as simple as that. There's just no support there. It's just a massive gap in the support because we haven't actually trended in this region. We haven't traded in that region between 30K and 20K for a long period of time at all on a longer term scale, literally nothing. So it's worth being cautious. It's worth noting that is a very likely, in fact, it is probably the most likely thing to play out on Bitcoin. Now, let's look at my other Bitcoin chart and we can wrap it up for Bitcoin here today and we can get in some questions you guys might have. Might be a bit of a shorter live stream today, just letting you know. But what we're seeing on Bitcoin right now is the trend continuing quite clearly. We have this downwards channel formation, as you guys would be well aware of by now, and I've spoken about it many, many times. Let me try to fix it up so you can see it a little bit clearer. This descending channel formation is very much... Let me just fix it up a little bit. Sorry, guys. Very much prominent. And we're seeing that if this does play out, if this does continue to play out, we could see either the yellow scenario or if it doesn't continue to play out, the orange scenario. Now, the yellow scenario is based off of the 200-week SMA. Okay, and the 200-week SMA, I don't have it on this chart, would be in this yellow box, right, when we reach that region, if we continue downwards in this channel. So assuming the trend doesn't break, assuming we just keep bouncing, which is not really that unlikely, we're going to be reaching a 200-week in March. As early as March, it's a month away. Okay? Assuming we break out, assuming we see an actual, realistic, strong dead cat bounce, which again, is possible. I don't think the next couple of weeks, but it is possible. We will be breaking outwards. We'll be going probably towards 48K. And then when the Federal Reserve have a meeting about interest rates and we raise interest rates, we'll be dumping downwards and we'll be reaching the bottom between April and November. Okay, so the yellow scenario, we're reaching the bottom in March. The orange scenario, we're reaching the bottom between April and November. You might think, well, why April and November? That's a pretty big time frame, right? Surely I can be more precise than that. I actually cannot be more precise than that due to the fact we just don't have the evidence to be more precise. Now, I did have a chart. You can go back. I've talked about it so many times. I'll link it in the live stream description after this live stream. I did have a chart. I'm not going to bring it up right now. That kind of goes over the 4-year cycle theory and how it still very much is prominent for Bitcoin. If you disagree with me, go watch the video. I'm sure that will be an interesting thing. You might even change your mind. And that is kind of indicating that, well, according to multiple fractals that have played out over time, we're going to be bottoming out in November. And I apologize for not having this ready right now, but I do speak about it basically every Bitcoin video, and I'll link that below, so come back later. But that is the indicator telling us, hey, we're going to November before we bottom out. And so I'm looking at even March or if that, so what I'm hoping for, sorry, I'll just clarify, what I'm hoping for is this yellow scenario. Because if this yellow scenario plays out and we just keep trending downwards with the channel, like, you know, the trend is your friend, then we can get there very, very soon, you know, within a month or a month and a half, and then we can bottom out, get everything ready, and we can start moving up again ASAP. Literally within the end of March, we'll start moving up again. Now, if the orange scenario takes place and we bounce up, we're just going to delay the process. Nothing really is going to happen on a macro scale. We're just going to delay the process, and it's just going to take much longer to recover. So, yeah, I am hoping for Bitcoin to keep dying. I want Bitcoin to go down as fast as possible. Okay, I don't think it's a bad thing. And if we do dead cat bounce, it just means we wait longer. You know, no one wants to wait until November for something that's pretty much very, very likely to happen. And it could actually happen in March. You know, it's just a burning time. That's 8 months down the drain, right? So hopefully it happens in March. Hopefully it happens very soon. I don't want to see this happening in November, but there is a considerable amount of information to support it will be happening in November. So you might say, what is my prediction? My prediction is I don't know. My prediction is one of these two scenarios is going to play out in terms of time frame. But my price prediction is we're going to end up at the 200 week. The date is just a little bit debatable. But these are the two scenarios I'm seeing. And just for reference, November, if you want to get a bit of perspective, November is all the way over here. So do you really want to wait that long? I mean, look at that on a yearly time frame. That's a long time to be waiting. I don't know why my internet's not working properly today, guys. I'm sorry, my chart's not loading in some sectors. But the point is, yeah, you don't want to wait until November. We hope it happens in March. We hope we'll just keep trending downwards here. So let's look at some questions.